Thanks to our friends on the 5. Welcome to Hannity. This is a Fox News alert. Leftist rage reaches now an all-time high as liberal hatred towards the president is now spiraling out of control. Newt Gingrich, Jay Sekulow, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, all here tonight. Plus, special counsel Robert Mueller is engaging in investigative mission creep. What I warned you about, it's now turned into a political witch hunt. It needs to be shut down. We will cover all of that in tonight's very important opening monologue. All right, liberal hatred towards President Trump and Republicans has now reached a fever pitch. It has become uglier, nastier than anything we have seen in modern political history. And now it is becoming violent. Just take a look at what happened. Remember, last week, a deranged left-wing ideologue trying to assassinate Republican lawmakers. Now, thankfully, 2 brave, armed Capitol Police officers were there, and they prevented this from becoming what could have been a massacre. And you know what's even more disturbing is that police have found a list the gunman had in his van, and it contained the names of 6 GOP congressmen. Now, 3 of those Republican lawmakers on that list will be joining us later in the program tonight. But here's the thing. This horrific assassination attempt is just one example in a much, much larger pattern of vile, disturbing left-wing hatred that now sometimes is encouraging violence. For example, there is a performance of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar that's been going on in New York City, depicting a President Trump lookalike getting brutally murdered. That's night after night. Last Friday, a protester actually rushed the stage at the play and reportedly yelled, quote, "Stop the normalization of political violence against the right." That protester will join us also later tonight. Now, in 2012, there was a theater company. They did use an Obama-like character in the same play. But can you imagine if the circumstances were the same back then as they are now? That wasn't covered a lot then. The mainstream media would be apoplectic and rushing, of course, to blame conservatives and, of course, Second Amendment supporters, and they'd be going ballistic over all of this. Now, I here on this program, I've been coming under fire from never-Trumpers who say that I'm, quote, overreacting by criticizing this play, and I don't know Shakespeare? Really? This isn't about Shakespeare. It's about glorifying. By the way, this is for Liberal Joe on MSNBC. This is glorifying violence against the President of the United States of America. Look, in 2012, if the Obama version had gotten more attention, I would have taken the same position. It was wrong then. It's wrong now. This isn't even really about freedom of speech, although I'd never called for anybody to be silenced. These liberal purveyors of hate have the right to say whatever they want, and I have a right to call them out for being beyond tasteless, vile, and disgusting. And let me remind them of the viciousness that has been spewed from the left in this country. Here's one example that is so graphic, we always have to warn you before we put it up on your screen. Kathy Griffin posing as an ISIS fighter with a fake, bloody, severed head of Donald Trump. You know what? Is posing like a jihadist with something that looks like the president's head? Is that the right thing to do? Is that what we want in this country? Or is it a threat potentially against the president? Or how about this from Madonna at the Women's March with thousands of left-wing protesters is telling a crowd of angry protesters who are in Washington, D.C. that you thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. Is that a smart thing to do? Or can it be interpreted as a threat against the president? Now, there are countless other examples of liberals making threats against the president. But here's the thing. This isn't really free speech. This isn't art. This isn't Shakespeare. This is about a rage, a hatred of this president and the left and liberals trying to objectify, dehumanize this president. They're trying to paint him as not human. Now, peaceful protests, you know what? That's not what Democrats and the left have been calling for since the election. No, they've been calling for, remember the words, resistance. So let's be clear. I'm not saying that the left is responsible for what happened last week or Bernie Sanders supporters are. That is not Bernie Sanders supporters, what happened in Alexandria, Virginia. I won't say that because you have to hold people accountable when they commit acts of violence. They're responsible. But you cannot deny there is this out-of-control rage and hatred coming from the left in America today. It is a very, very dangerous game that is being played out here, and it's one the left plays, frankly, all the time. Remember back in 2008, President Obama said this about yours truly.
Mr. Burgess, he can speak.
Oh, put me on your stand.
I might have to put Mr. Burgess on Fox News. You know, give him. I'll put Mr. Burgess up against Sean Hannity. He'll tear him up.
And Obama also said, get in their face. Remember during the 2016 campaign, former Vice President, crazy Uncle Joe Biden, said this about then candidate Donald Trump.
The press always asks me, don't I wish I were debating him? No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym. That's what I wish.
Yeah, if I said taking Uncle Joe behind the gym, what would happen to me? Now, we're going to have more on this topic later in the program tonight. It's so important. But also tonight, special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation is, in fact, now turning into a dangerous witch hunt by engaging what I've been warning about, investigation mission creep. Now, we've been highlighting night after night exactly what's going on here. And here are the facts. Mueller, who has massive, huge, numerous conflicts of interest with his relationship with James Comey, is now hiring an army of people to look into everything else but Trump-Russia collusion, including, for example, Jared Kushner's finances. There's also the fact that at least 3 people on Mueller's team have donated to Obama and Clinton. Does that sound fair, balanced, and partial to you? Or the fact that now they're investigating other issues like obstruction? Here's what's happening. This whole thing was supposed to be about so-called Trump-Russia collusion. But guess what? There's zero evidence. Well, none whatsoever at this point. So now Mueller is now looking into other things, finances, business dealings, obstruction. And we can expect it's only going to get bigger and more expansive day in and day out. And you can bet one thing, he's not going to stop until he finds something to justify his existence. It's what I call investigation mission creep. And speaking of the facts, if Mueller wants to investigate obstruction of justice, then he should ask his good friend James Comey, his BFF, about Loretta Lynch influencing him in the Clinton email investigation and meeting Bill Clinton on the tarmac and saying it's not an investigation, no, it's a matter. Oh, and by the way, Sarah Carter reporting, yes, she might have put the kibosh on any potential indictment. And if Mueller wants to look into his finances or any finances, then why not investigate the pay-to-play scheme that was going on at the Clinton Foundation? Remember, the Uranium One deal. There's a Russian conspiracy. Hillary Clinton's Secretary of State signing off on giving 20% of America's uranium to Vladimir Putin and the Russians. And by the way, all the while, people involved in that deal donating millions and millions to the Clinton Foundation. And while her husband, by the way, Bill Clinton, was doubling his speaking fees in Moscow. Now, instead of creating crimes, Mueller should be investigating the ones we actually know occurred, including the felonies by Hillary Clinton. Here with reaction, author of the brand new book, by the way, a bestseller, Understanding Trump, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. You know, you said something this weekend that really is true, but should be scary to every American. People are going to be indicted over something that has nothing to do with the original investigation.
Look, I absolutely believe that. If you look at, it gets worse the more I've done research over the last 3 or 4 days. The State Department, or the Justice Department, the Department of Justice, has 97% of its donations went to Hillary Clinton, 3% went to Trump. That's at the Justice Department. That was bad enough as a culture. Now it turns out that the law firm that Mueller comes from was this is almost hard to believe, 99.81% of their money went to Hillary Clinton. It was like $360,000 to a total of $678. So you have this very biased culture at the Department of Justice, which is 97% for Hillary in terms of donations. They then reach out to an even more biased law firm, which is at 99.81%, to find the lawyer to head up the nonpartisan, remember, nonpartisan investigation. He then hires 4 key lawyers, all of whom donated to Democrats. As you pointed out, my favorite is the one who defended the Clinton Foundation against Freedom of Information Act.
It worked for Hillary.
It's unbelievable. You know, as somebody occasionally writes novels, I don't know that I'd have the nerve to write this novel. But if somebody wants to know what the deep state is, start up here with the Justice Department's 97%, come down then to the law firm at 99.81%, pick a group of lawyers who are hardcore Democrats, two of whom, by the way, also had prosecutorial problems because they hid evidence from the defendants. One was repudiated 9-0 by the Supreme Court. And you look at this pattern, and I think it's not defensible.
Rosenstein wrote a 2-page memo saying Comey has to go. Okay.
Right.
So Comey then leaks to the New York Times. Then Comey then gets his BFF to be the special counsel. Rosenstein contributes to all of this. And now he's talking about shifting away from Russia-Trump collusion, the lie, into obstruction and finances. This is dangerous for this country. Both of them need to recuse themselves and get out of the way. Why are they even still there?
Well, I mean, you have to question the entire special investigatory process that brings in these headhunters who are very high-powered lawyers. They're not going to leave until they get somebody. And that was my point over the weekend. You know, Karl Rove wrote a very good column last week in the Wall Street Journal because he's lived through this. And he said, you have to be very worried about special investigators running amok. And he cited in his own case, he had forgotten one phone call. Now, imagine how many phone calls somebody in Karl's position in the White House was getting. He forgot one phone call that was months ago or a year ago. They almost indicted him for forgetfulness. I mean, that's how vindictive, that's how powerful the criminal powers of the state are.
Scooter Libby had a perjury trap. By the way, I want to send our thoughts and prayers to the family of this young man, Otto, that just recently returned from North Korea. He died tonight. I am so sad for this family. I want to ask you one final question, and I think this is important. I really believe this rhetoric, this hatred that I talked about in my opening monologue, the Shakespeare, the ISIS pose, the rhetoric, the hate, the violence directed at this president to dehumanize him is now extraordinarily dangerous. Your thoughts?
It's extremely dangerous, and it's much deeper than just Trump. I talked to college students at the College Republican National Convention this week. I asked them, how many of you feel intimidated in your campus? A third of them raised their hands. I've had students tell me that they are literally intimidated against saying that they were for Trump because they thought it would cost them 2 or 3 grade levels from their professor. This anti-conservative, anti-Trump, anti-Republican pattern is very deep. It's very widespread. It's in the newsrooms. It's in Hollywood. It's in the academic community. And it's in the bureaucracy. And that's what the deep state's all about. And that's why this fight's going to go on for all 8 years of the Trump presidency.
It's now a fourth branch of government, and the media colluding with them is even worse. 11 months of lies, no apologies, no retractions. No, we're going to get this right. By the way, Mr. Speaker, congrats on the book, Understanding Trump, Amazon.com, Hannity.com, bookstores everywhere. Thank you, sir, for being with us.